Good afternoon. Today is Monday, June 25th, 2018. It is 1:05 p.m. and we're here for the regular trustee meeting. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions or modifications?
Hearing no additions or
Actually, I have a couple. Under old business, if we can just insert in there a discussion regarding the request of the board for a third-party audit of our accounts payable and receivable. A discussion of the board regarding the resolution that the board passed on May 28th for investment per the recommendation of the Investment Advisory Committee. And then just a cursory update, if we can, on the Township Administrator's annual goals. Just kind of where we stand and when you'll be able to provide us maybe an interim update. Are there any other additions or changes?
hearing no other additions or changes, I would move to accept the agenda for June 25th meeting.
As amended.
As amended.
Modified. Second.
Ms. Wallace.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Kretz.
Yes.
Make a motion to accept general ledger report in the amount of $349,944.63 for the June 20th, 2018 payroll.
Second.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Wallace.
Yes.
Mr. Kretz.
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the payment listing reports in the amount of $93,292.25 for payments through June 20th, 2018.
Second.
Ms. Wallace.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Mr. Kretz.
Yes. And there are no
There
minutes
were
to
no
approve.
minutes.
This time we open the floor up to any citizens desiring to speak. Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. And so as far as the first item that we added regarding the request of the board for a third-party audit of our accounts payable, we made that request back, I believe, in April. Ms. Ahrens, has that been done?
Nope.
Okay. Is there a reason why?
Our accounts payable and assistant fiscal officer have gone through, and they're still catching up, but we've found no discrepancies. There aren't any checks missing. There's no money missing or bank statements. So there was an email sent in May updating you on that as well. So once we get fully caught up, I'm not anticipating there being a problem. There's nothing missing. There's nothing.
I didn't accuse anything of being missing. Best practices whenever you find a case like that, if you can ask any CPA, you could ask David Graham, you could ask Mr. Gould at the county, is that when you find out that you have a past employee, or now past at the time present employee, who is stashing invoices in file cabinets, hiding invoices under desks, not paying bills on time, to the point where vendors are cutting us off from being able to buy oxygen, and the sheriff is approaching me personally at events and asking me to get involved because he can't get his bill paid to the county. I think it'd be prudent for the township to spend a couple dollars and have a third-party audit performed. I don't know, I've never been involved. I've owned companies, I've run companies from $1 million to $200 million. I've never seen, it's egregious to not have a third party come in and audit those books and make sure that we are caught up. An internal audit is no substitute for a third-party audit. That's my opinion, and it's an educated and well-experienced opinion.
I thank you for your opinion. And once we get caught up, it's not that I'm opposed to it.
How
but
are
right
we
now,
that behind, Miss Ahrens? How did you let it get that far behind?
How did I let it get that far?
You're in charge of that department.
We're working diligently and hard, spending a lot of hours reconciling and making sure that everything is
But you have a
balanced
fiduciary
to the
responsibility
and I
for that.
have
And so
continued to do
how
that.
did it get that far behind? under your
That's-
watch.
That's what happens when you cut my budget in half, when you fire
No,
my
actually,
employees of 10
it's
years.
not. It's
Yeah,
actually not
that's how
what
we got
happens,
here.
no. That's not what happens. And so this leads into a further discussion of how the meeting ended last time. And I watched that video 4 times and my blood just boiled each time I watched it because there were so many untruths spoken. It was ridiculous. So your budget, essentially, number one, show up to a budget hearing when you want to ask to increase the pay for the employee that actually caused the problem that you're now fixing. You press this board to increase her pay. At the same time, she wasn't paying invoices and she was hiding them in file cabinets.
Well, if I
it's
had
egregious.
had the money to hire somebody in the first place,
Ms.
then I
Aarons,
wouldn't have been
it's
in
not the
that
money that
situation.
you
But
had,
when
or
you pay
it's-
$13 an hour for a $26 million budget,
The budget
I
is
do the best that I
irrelevant.
can.
The
So
dollar
I
amount per
heard
hour.
what you said, and I appreciate your opinion.
I appreciate that you appreciate it. The fact of the matter is that we had more experienced people apply for the job. They either weren't interviewed or they were turned away, and they were willing to accept the pay.
And anytime you want to run for my job, feel free to run for my job.
If that's what it takes, that's fine, but that's not what this discussion's about. This is simply about each of us doing what's right for the township.
And I understand you feel that way. You don't let me seem to feel the same way, and I do. So,
Sorry, we have a vast difference of opinion.
always
As
have.
far as the resolution, no, we didn't actually. In the beginning, we had similar opinions. And then the truth came out. With regards to the resolution that was passed on May 28th, what action has the fiscal office taken with regards to that resolution that the board unanimously passed?
None, because by the same token, once we catch up, I am not doing anything. And
Ms. Aarons, as Ms. Wallace pointed out in the last meeting, the funds for the Fire Station 65, those are funds that are already invested with Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley has made a recommendation to the board and to the advisory committee, essentially, to re-ladder those investments in a different ladder. Not to withdraw them, not to double them, but to take those funds and reinvest them so that we can make more. We've lost 30 days of earnings already.
you
How
haven't
many-
lost anything. I haven't taken
Actually,
anything out. We still
No,
are with
Ms.
Morgan
Aarons, we could
Stanley.
make more on the same money. I don't think you understand that.
I
So
do
if-
understand that. I also understand it's not my job to make money off of taxpayer dollars. If we have that much
Ms.
money,
Aarons,
then
it
we
is
should
your
be
job
talking
to make
gr-
money off taxpayer dollars. It's all of our jobs to invest that money and
as
to.
wisely and
every
prudently, and
every
that
dollar
is
of-
my job,
and
and I
every
am
dollar of
doing that
in-
job.
Every dollar of interest that we can earn is one less dollar of tax we need to collect. So and we've had this discussion for the last 5 years, that you either give it back or you invest it, and so you don't have to ask for another dollar the next day.
You would
So
like
that's
to
where we're
come
at.
in and tell me how to invest the taxpayers' dollars. I have done my job. I am doing
Actually,
my
you
job.
haven't. Your
I
job-
am.
your
I'm,
job
you
is
don't,
to
I am
fulfill
sorry
the
that you don't
action-
disagree with the way that I'm doing
But
it,
your
but
job
I
is to
am
fulfill
completely
that resolution.
comfortable. I am completely comfortable
Your
with
job
the
is to
job that I'm
fulfill
doing.
that resolution.
When you have your fire station and
When
you
you
know
have
how
that-
much money you're gonna spend.
And we do.
And you have, no, it keeps changing.
What's the
it
amount,
keeps
Ms.
changing.
Aarons?
I have no idea. It was
Okay,
supposed to be
but we
2.5
do.
million. Isn't that what you based that ladder on, was 2.5 million?
No, actually, it's not.
Now
So-
you're up to 4.95, what are you up to?
No, your numbers are incorrect and they're misinformed.
When
So
you get your numbers,
Ms.
it's
Aarons,
not that I'm against it. It's not,
You're
I'm
not
not.
understanding. So we defined a dollar amount, said to invest that amount. So it's defined. It's not 5 million. It's not 2 million. So it's defined. And the funds are already invested, and we simply passed a resolution to reinvest them in something different to earn more money in the same period of time they would remain invested. We can argue about it all day long, but this board passed a resolution to do that. Your job is to fulfill that resolution.
This board cannot tell me how to invest taxpayer dollars.
But we have an investment committee
Yeah,
that
this
tells
board-
I
us,
understand that.
and we approve the investment committee's recommendation.
You
And the
did.
fact that
so
you didn't,
we're
you
asking
didn't show
you-
up at the meeting isn't our fault. So, I mean, when you don't show up for meetings, it's not our fault. No different than the
And
budget
just
hearings.
because I don't invest the money the way you want me to invest the
It's
money.
not a matter of that, Ms.
does
Aarons.
it-
It's a matter of we passed a resolution. Your job, if the money is there, to fulfill the request.
It
It's
also
that simple.
it also was taking the $2 million out of Huntington and putting that towards the investment, which I'm not going to do. That
then-
Huntington is
then
our
this board
savings.
needs
Okay,
to consider the
let's-
legal actions to compel that. We can move on, we can table it for now.
Well,
but
I'd like to
that's-
find out from the attorney that's present, to find out if we've passed a resolution, then what is our next step to have action taken?
I'm gonna defer to Ms. Frick on this because of her background, her familiarity with the, situation. If you need an answer on that before she returns, I'll be happy to look into it.
Because the township taxpayers are losing money every day when it can be invested in a better program. The program has been defined by an investment committee that made the recommendation to this board. The board has agreed with the investment committee's discussion. We were a part of meetings where they explained to us the laddering of investments and how we could make a little bit more than, 0.02% on our money. And so I want that to expediently happen.
Well, I think also we've gone to great lengths to have subject matter experts in that board that have background with experience with this. So, I mean, I can't speak for, I can only speak for myself, but, I feel confident with the members that are there, especially Mr. Anzik and our other member that we've just recently brought on, that, the information we're getting from them, is clearly, I mean, Ms. Aarons, do you have the background and the knowledge with regards to investment subject matter to make a verdict, to make an opinion over what our licensed committee members have made?
I am not against your laddering process. That's not it. I'm not. Based on the money that you have in Morgan Stanley currently, that's not an issue. But knowing what the schedule is and you wanted it done right then, you also took into
It's
consideration
been 4
moving
weeks,
that.
Ms. Aarons.
I'm talking to Mr. Roberts.
I
real
understand,
quick.
I'm chair of this board, it's
So,
been 4 weeks.
It was said when you passed that resolution that when I got caught up, that would be, did I not say that? That would be the
You
first
made the comment to
resolution
Mr.
that I
Roberts
would.
under the breath that
that
it
I
would go to the
would
bottom of
look
the pile
into
and you'll
that.
get to it when you get to it.
My
And so that's
goal
that's
is to move
obstruction.
us forward. It's the township to pay our bills and to do that. And you do not sit in the classes that I sit at when I go to training.
And you haven't sat in the classes or the seats that I've sat in my whole life.
Okay, so
So,
Mr.
let's
Anzik
move on
is,
from this.
Mr.
Mr.
Wait,
Roberts.
Mr. Anzik is our expert. He's your expert that you brought into
Right.
the picture. This is his recommendation, so you're willing to go against his recommendation for what we need to do when you followed his recommendation every step of the way so
I
far.
haven't gotten to his recommendation.
Show up at the
We
meeting.
are
Let's
still-
move this forward, please.
Show up at the
So,
meeting.
yep.
I can, once every 90 days, I can show up to this meeting. I show up every time that I
You
am in
didn't show up at
town
budget
or
hearings and you
available.
didn't show up at the investment advisory committees, so you didn't, so.
Like I said.
And then, it's a shame, so as far as.
It's not that I'm working against
Ms. Aarons,
you.
we're
I'm
gonna
just
move
not
on.
doing what you want right now.
You're not
We
doing
have
it at all.
different-
So it's
Well,
been it's been 2.5 to 3 months as far as the external audit. It's been a month now since the resolution was passed. So it's not yesterday, it's not 2 weeks ago, it's 4 weeks and 8 to 10 weeks ago. So we'll move on from this, we're gonna move on with the agenda. Mr. Zaharian, as far as when can the board receive an update on your annual performance goals?
I give you some now, and I can put something in the next packet. Just a couple things on the zoning resolution updates that the board had asked. We have 2 text amendments going to the zoning commission next month. So later on in either July, we'll be asking the board to set a special meeting in the evening to discuss the amendments to the text amendments, I'm sorry. Then the zoning commission will also in July meet, have a work session to discuss the next 2 topics. So the 4 we're looking at is obviously table 2, highway overlay district and zoning district. Mining zoning district, highway overlay district, and table 2 update. So we should have all those coming to you in the next 2 weeks. I did provide, I'm sorry, I got one here. I did provide some sample pictures here in your packet, not in your packet, but today. In regards to some design that the committee's looking at. The committee is made up of each department, including the fiscal office.
All right, I have one.
Yeah, I'll go all the way down, please.
I did.
Okay.
Didn't know, Joe.
So here's one of the designs we're looking at. These are pictures of the township. Every time that you click on the webpage, there'll obviously be a new picture. We're staying with the kind of the blue and green colors of the township. It looks like once we have the final, what it's gonna look like, we have a meeting, the committee has a meeting this week. We'll present that to the board, and then the next step is moving actual data from our old website to the new website. Rotary Park, we will have an agreement in front of the board, probably at the July 9th meeting, to discuss the next Rotary agreement, which essentially will be phase out for us in regards to Rotary Park and then deeding the land to the city of Beavercreek. So it'll explain what we're gonna do in the meantime, and then the phase out option. Obviously, the funding plan for the next 10-year funding cycle, that will be given to you guys at the end of the year. Hopefully around budget time. And then we have executed the CMR process, as you're aware of, for the Station 65 project. And I'm hoping next week, once the state funding comes down for the Ohio Public Works Commission, we're gonna get moving pretty quickly on the water and sewer project to the airport. So the first thing we have to do is send out a bid for that project. So, but it's everything, we have to wait till July 1 to get the state funding.
Okay.
Yeah. Other than that, I'll have something detailed in your packet to take a look at next meeting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other new business, and so Administrator with the joint meeting with schools.
Thank you, Board. Based on the last meeting, I went back to the superintendent and the school board. They can meet September 10th at 6:30 p.m. It is our turn to host, so we'll confirm that. Those are the dates that the board members gave me the last meeting. Mr. Otten and myself will be sitting down and talk about some topics to bring up. Obviously, growth is going to be one on our end that the board would like to, the school board would like to hear an update on.
And that'll be after our regular meeting?
It's at 6:30 in the evening, so yeah, so we'll have a special meeting that evening.
We had spoken with Mr. Amrine maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago regarding requesting the schools kind of back share with us their projections, just to make sure that we're both tracking.
Yeah.
So maybe if they can have some of that information,
Sure.
it might be helpful.
I'll talk to the treasurer.
So. 'Cause I don't know if we've heard any feedback whether our information conflicts with what they find.
No, we haven't, but they do love our reports every time I see them. Both the treasurer and the superintendent. It gives them essentially every 2 weeks a real, well, second and fourth of the month, real-time data in regards to growth in the unincorporated area of the township. Thank you, Board. Next item is the Sheriff's Office biweekly report. Starts on page 4. Are there any questions?
I had a question on page 10. There was, and we don't have a sheriff representative here. The suspicious vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
we had, it was that many vehicles in one, is it the same vehicle?
No, it's different, different call
2,
types.
4, 6, 8 different, and
Yeah,
the
there's-
suspicious person?
There's eight suspicious vehicle calls or incidents. These are either suspicious person or suspicious vehicle. Suspicious person could be one of our businesses, calls in and says there's somebody suspicious standing out front,
Okay.
and they'll come out. Suspicious vehicle is the same, whether it could be in a residential neighborhood or in, a vehicle that's slowly driving by. That's the call type. I
Do
don't
we
details.
have, when it shows these incident numbers,
Mm-hmm.
do we have a location that, are they looking at? I don't need to know it right this.
Yeah,
I'm
we-
just saying that So that, is it, is it a neighborhood, a particular neighborhood that we need to look out for? Or is it a particular business development that is having more than, because we just see the incident
Sure,
report
yeah,
numbers.
what we dropped out of here was the incident addresses. We don't share
Well,
that in
and
the
I-
packet. But I can go back and look at that.
I'm just wondering if there's, do they pay attention to that on the
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
area, and if they're finding it in the, like a neighborhood,
I'll go
are
back.
they putting that together and check, keeping a car in the neighborhood
Looking
or
for
something?
patterns and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
adjusting
that's what I'm
accordingly.
saying.
Yeah,
One of the things, Ms. Wallace, that used to occur, and I'm sure it still does, in the area of Orchard and 35, for example, and my own business included, a lot of us formed almost like a neighborhood watch. And so when a suspicious car would be lingering, we would call it in, and we'd identify the car and what the people looked like, and then the sheriffs would respond, and that would show up as a suspicious vehicle, or person, or both. So it occurred frequently, and I would imagine it hasn't slowed down much.
And I'd like to know, as far as, do we have a neighborhood or a business area that brings out, how many of these suspicious incident reports are in one specific location?
Mhm. Yeah, there's I can share a report with the board that shows like the most frequent and,
Almost like a heat map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think is what
yeah.
That's
We-
what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
Just to be aware of it, and,
is still preserving the confidentiality of certain
Correct.
things.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and what we had, Ms. Wallace, is we had a case in a very early report where we had an attempted suicide, and they had an address, and that kind of information we don't necessarily want to.
publicize. I get that. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
No other questions on the sheriff's report?
Thank you, board. Next item is the group medical plan MMO renewal.
Thank you.
In your packet, starting on page 12, are all the options are listed there, based on the discussion we had at the special meeting. I do not have a motion prepared, because I didn't know what direction, what option, obviously renewal option the board was gonna take. I do have a partially filled out purchase request in case the board moves forward with it. We do have to renew by the end of the month.
Well, as I passed out to all the board members, again, as far as employees, as a township trustee, I can't justify such a rich plan, and the high increase for each employee of 1,000 deductible is unheard of in the private sector, yet alone in the public sector, no matter what task you're assigned to do. And I had recommended a 2,000 deductible that brings the premium cost down to the employees pretty close to what they were paying this year or last month. And so I'm recommending that we go to the 2,000 deductible plan. If I understand it's a notch for some people to go from 1,000 to 2,000, we are allowed, with the numbers that we have, a dual option environment where an employee can pick the 2,000 deductible plan or the 1,500 deductible plan based on the cost, and we can run a dual option plan in the township, so that those that want to save money or that know that their health is in great shape and they're not planning on major surgeries can opt to a lower amount to pay. So I'm like the trustees to consider at least a dual option plan, if not just taking it to a higher deductible.
I guess the question I would have is, number one, to confirm on the dual option, it is something that we can offer.
I know for a fact we can offer that.
Well, I'm asking legal, I'm asking,
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're more in tune to some of this than I am, so,
I believe that you can,
okay.
but I'll double check it.
Okay. And then, have we surveyed, in previous years, Alex, what level of participation we would get in a dual option offering? I can't remember if we ever did it.
We looked at a
Maybe
dual
did it
option
before.
several years ago, but the numbers weren't coming back that it was cost effective to offer a dual option. And we also looked in the past as a dual option of a high deductible HSA and a regular PPO plan,
Right,
yeah.
it was minimal if
Yeah.
any.
I don't think these numbers presented to you today, even though I believe we can offer a dual option, I don't think these numbers indicate a dual option.
No, I would imagine these, and where I was headed with the question was, I'm presuming that these numbers and these percentage increases are based on 100% in one column or the other.
Correct.
And that if you split and you say you have 70-30 or 50-50, you dilute the value of the plan, and therefore both percentages would go up. That's my presumption. I don't know that for a fact. I'm asking that.
No, it doesn't work that way. I mean,
So I would assume that there's a minimum level of participation.
Two.
needed. Just two.
two,
I thought when we looked at a dual option once before, the cost
Yep.
was gonna be much more if we didn't, if there was just the minimum met.
I think the last time we did look at a dual option, it was a HSA, high deductible, and a PPO plan. So we would, by union contract for the firefighters, they would remain on the PPO plan, and the rest of the township would go to an HSA. That's the last time I recall we looked at a dual option.
Is this handout from you, Alex?
That's
or
from me.
you?
It's in the CERB report.
it's in that CERB report that
Right.
we received, but I just wanted to point out my points here on what the townships in the state of Ohio have as far as plans, and most of them are a higher deductible than $1,300 or higher, and the average cost out of pocket about $2,600, and that's 67% of the population of townships only. It doesn't take into consideration the cities.
I must have been reading a different page, because the section that I saw was, and maybe it wasn't the CERB, it was the other report, that showed that across the state of Ohio, townships, number one, pay one of the lowest percentages of their health care as far as township employees, compared to cities, counties, state of Ohio. But within townships alone, comparing townships to townships, that the majority of township employees pay 90% of their health care, whereas in our situation, we're at an 80-20.
And I'm not debating that part. My part of the debate is the fact that we have $1,000 deductible plan, and we have to get into the 21st century in that,
Sure, but if
you know,
you-
we can't
right.
justify
But
to,
if you have a $2,500 deductible plan and you only pay 90% of your health insurance premiums.
even
you
80%.
No, I'm saying, our employees pay 80.
Our employees pay
Pay
20.
I'm sorry, our employees pay 20. Most employees, most township employees in the state, from the information I was provided, I think we all have the same thing, only
Pay
pay
10.
10. They may pay a higher deductible, but they're only paying 10% of their monthly or annual premiums. So I don't.
But
when
that
you-
trend is changing. I mean, if you look at
Well,
all the
across-
different,
Across the state, townships pay the least, it appears. I mean, counties and cities pay, those
townships
employees
pay
pay
the
more.
most, and the employee pays the
The employee
least.
pays the least, is where I'm coming from, so.
And what I'm trying to say is, we have levies that are gonna be on the ballot, and if you look at private sector, you know, public sector was always supposed to be less than private. And if you look, as our consultant came in here and told us, 4 groups out of 1,100 had a deductible of 1,000 or less. And private sector, if you look at any private sector employment, you're looking at a $3,000 to $5,000 deductible plan, period. There are no $1,000 deductible plans available in the private sector in 99% of the cases. So with the township having a $1,000 deductible, we are better than almost any employer in Beavercreek City or Township. And,
On
you know.
deductible, but what we don't know is what their participation is, cause what I got out of the report is, we have a lower deductible, but as Mr. Kretz said, our participation is double.
most employers will pay,
So if we're
Either-
gonna, are you suggesting that if you're going to increase the deductible, you want to change the participation
No.
percent as well?
No, that was not part of anything I've said. I'm just saying that at 20% it's reasonable I'm not even
And
going
and I
there.
don't disagree with that.
I'm not
but-
even going there as far as what private sector does.
That's moving
Private
up
sector
to-
does, they're allowed to pay 50% of employee costs
Mm-hmm.
and 0% of dependents.
But we weren't looking at,
And
we
I'm not
looked at a
saying to change-
cross-section of municipalities.
And I'm not asking to change any of the contribution amounts. I'm just looking at an employee cost where they can get down to under $600 a month for a health insurance plan. And right now, they're up to $562, and they're going to $646 is the current numbers. That's a lot of money for an employee to hit, whatever percentage, your 20%, is still a big bite out of your pocket. And if you're not using the plan as much, a $2,000 deductible, when you have unlimited office co-pays at $10, unlimited office, specialty office, the probability is you're not gonna hit your deductible this year. And this deductible is only gonna go to, well, it goes to July of next year. So want us to look at a higher deductible plan when we renew.
What did the
I'm doing
committee,
some math here quick.
what did the committee recommend? Sorry if I missed that. The insurance committee, what did they
We didn't
recommend?
have it, we don't have an insurance committee per se, as I
Yes,
know of.
The township
No,
does.
we do. Alex, what did the,
No, the committee didn't meet. We had the open meeting with the board, last week to have the discussion. And they don't, there's no requirement for the committee. We did inform, at the staff meeting as well as the, union captains as well, that what all the options were, and that our initial renewal was at 33%. And right now, it's currently, if we currently renew, no changes, it's 15%.
I only see Medical Mutual. Did nobody else bid on our healthcare?
no, we had.
They did, but that decision, we did
We zeroed
did
it in.
agree that to zero in on them.
Just stay with medical mutual.
For
We did
because of
agree as
the-
far as all the options that were presented, that they were the best, and then we just determined to drill down within them instead of taking and getting 8 levels for all the other providers.
Okay, to apply some,
We did that at one of these meetings, I thought.
Mr. Roberts, to apply some math to it, so if I just look at a 1,500 deductible versus, make sure I'm looking at the right column here, yeah, versus the 2,000. So a family plan, the plan itself on a 1,500 deductible would be $1,882 and 36 cents per month versus $1,789 if we went to a $2,000 deductible. So if I do the math and I say 1,882 times 12 is 22,584, and 1,789 times 12 is 21,468. I subtract, the difference is $1,116. If our employees are paying 20% of that, it's a $223 difference plus the 500 in the deductible. So a $773 difference on a year. That's the math.
And that's at 15 to 2,000.
That's between a 15 and a 2,000. And I had commented in the last couple meetings, but in the last meeting specifically, I had said I would support a 1,250 or a 1,500, but I was not in favor of a 3,000. There was at one point we were talking going all the way up to 3,000, and so just applying the math to it, there's a human side to it. And I think you've heard me say this before. Whether I or everybody on this board can afford it or not, there are people in our township who may not be able to afford that difference. So the ability to offer, and I don't know if those folks would take the high deductible or the low deductible. I think from an administrative standpoint, I would presume that fiscal would prefer to have one plan to administer rather than two. Same with HR, but with this number of employees, it's perfectly reasonable to be able to offer the option if it makes sense. you know, at the end of the day, it's a $773 difference to the employee. It is a $77,000 difference to the township. In light of what I've said before, I guess I would prefer to stay at 1,500 and message that we need to move this. We need to advance this probably at least each year for the next couple years in baby steps rather than take it all in one. But we act as a board, and so I would not put up a huge fight against going to the 2,000, but $773 to a family with kids at Christmas is a lot of money. So it is. So I would support going to 1,500. So Mr. Roberts or Ms. Wallace, if somebody wants to make a motion, we can vote on that motion, or we can try to reach a consensus and then make a motion.
Well, I'd like to see, at least offer employees a dual option for those that want to save a little bit more money. I think that we have, and that'll help see what, you know, when they're broken down. So we would be looking at the column, the last two columns on that page there. And people can pick between the two, a 1,500 or 2,000 deductible. So I would rather offer the two and see where it goes this year. But we need to amend our health care plan, and we need to send the message to the employees that we have to amend it to something that's more reasonable to our community. Because private businesses would, once this gets out, it's unheard of to have these kind of low deductibles in any kind of work environment. So I would recommend that we do the 1,500 and a 2,000 option. I can't read what option it is. Option 8 and option 9, and see how it goes for this year.
I don't know if this is a dual option plan. I don't know if we can do that.
I think,
Yeah, I'd have to requote
I
a dual
think it's
option
gonna
as an
be-
option 8 and a 9. Once again, it goes back to our discussion in the special meeting, is that we will be creating 8 codes potentially for the fiscal office to manage as well as HR. So
No, Alex, I think you're incorrect. I think it's 8 codes for this, but if we went to a wellness program, it would be 16 codes.
if we did, but we had that latest court ruling in regards to the wellness
To the
program.
wellness,
So.
we're not gonna be doing that.
So what I would be recommending that we move forward with, because of the time, is to pick one of these renewals. We would have to meet again later this week, and I know everybody's schedule, based on the last meeting, is tight this week, to see what a dual renewal would be. A renewal option 8 and an option 9.
My preference would be to go with the 1,500 one plan this year, look at a dual option with an HSA for next year. And when we have that discussion next year, I would like to see, I always, and Chief will agree with this, I always ask for what's the total cost of ownership. And I think to address one piece of the equation without either acknowledging or addressing the other side of the equation, meaning what's the employee's percentage of the premiums they pay and what are their deductibles and out-of-pockets. They go hand in hand. I don't think you can unhinge them. That's my opinion.
I would agree with that comment.
So, I can make a motion.
And I know time's of the essence. I can say that I will support, you know, in the interest of compromise, option 8 for this coming year. The 1,500. I'm also for the baby steps. I'm not totally against the higher deductible, but I'm just, as Mr. Crest just said, without further conversation with regards to keeping those other two out-of-pocket and deductibles things without unhinging them, I don't know that we have enough information to move at this point, so. So I would support option 8, and if I need to make a motion to that, unless someone else wants to make a motion.
Is there any other component of this, Alex, that we need to consider? So, with the a wellness incentive, we're saying is off the table.
It's off the
at this
table.
point,
Until the court,
based on other complications
yeah,
from a legal
till the,
standpoint.
till the.
You know,
federal
now,
courts-
one thing that we did, cause we were looking at option 6 and 7, which are the 1250. Option 7 had one other little caveat to it, which was a prescription drug. But, you know, I don't know that option 8 or 9, neither one of those have that caveat in it. So, I mean,
Option 8, the difference there is, under out-of-pocket maximum, including deductibles, is the 90/10, and the prescription drugs, the tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 is currently same as what we have.
those stay the same,
They're
but
all
up
the same.
above on the prior page, option 7, there was
Options-
another suggestion of the prescription drug tier
Right,
Correct.
tier 2 and
modified slightly, which was going to provide somewhat of a savings.
I think that's in there, isn't it?
Renewal option 7 has the, it is this
Tier 2 and 3,
1250, individual deductible and family 2,500 at the 90/10, but a slight modification to the tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 prescription drugs, which reduced it from the 13.26% increase to 12.21.
So we
Now,
got an extra
option-
percent, we got an extra percent just by that one little change.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Option 8 is actually 11 point.
Yeah, and then option,
11.62, correct. So I just offer that as that's really the only little slight difference between the two, you know, is that something, I'm okay with offering option 8 as our renewal, but, you know, do my other two trustees have any preference on consideration, or do we need dialogue on that prescription part
I would go option 8
as presented?
as presented.
Ms. Wallace?
Option 8 is the best option, in my opinion, at this moment. I still like the option 9, but,
Alex, we enter into a contract year with them, so we'll be locked in for this
till next
this
July.
renewal period.
correct,
Okay.
yeah,
And I do like the idea of being able to offer dual option, but it's, at least the ones I've had in the past, we had to quote it that, when we came back and quoted it later, the numbers changed. And maybe that's changed, it's been maybe 4 years.
Both sides
5
went up.
years.
yeah, a lot of things have changed with group under the Affordable Care Act, so, the system is realizing that people need to have other options based on the cost of insurance.
Okay. So do you wanna make a motion?
I can do that if
just
we're at that
point
point.
out that staying with Medical Mutual, which was part of the discussion, was we would get the wellness rebate.
Which you have noted at the bottom, but it's
Yeah,
not
which
calculated
we
into
asked
your
them
percentage.
to include at the bottom there, level 1 rewards.
Yep, okay.
And, you know, at this moment, I would like to make sure that the word gets out to employees. When you have the wellness option and you get extra rebates back, that saves you money and it saves the township money. If those that don't participate in the wellness option, if we don't get the majority to participate, it's gonna cost everybody more money. Period. All the way around. So you have your peers that are those that don't wanna participate in the wellness. The township does not receive any of the information that you put in the computer about your health, your wellness, whatever's going on in your life. We do not get any of that data. It goes strictly to the insurance company. They keep it. They are not allowed to tell us anything. It is not used as part of any part of your evaluation or anything. But the wellness benefit that they offer is important to the township because everybody gets a rebate. We don't get the rebate, but you guys get rebates back. So please consider that when the wellness check comes out again.
Good point, Ms. Wallace. Okay. With
I
no
have a-
further,
I
go
have a
ahead.
purchase request with written in renewal option 8. We'll fill in the rest later. Because it comes out of different funds.
Okay, so for this motion, though, we want to essentially say that, and I'm just drafting language to make sure we have everything. You want to essentially cite that we want to motion to approve the renewal option 8 as with Medical Mutual of Ohio for the period beginning and ending when?
July 1st
July 1st.
To June 30th.
to June 30th of 19.
With Medical Mutual of Ohio.
Correct.
All right. With that being said, I'll offer the following motion for approval, and that would be to approve the renewal of our health care with Medical Mutual of Ohio. We will go with renewal option 8, which includes a $1,500 individual deductible, $3,000 family deductible, and as discussed in this meeting, in that option, that renewal period will run from July 1st of 2018 to June 30th of 2019.
I'll second that.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
No.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Next item's on page 14 is the bi-weekly report for HR. Are there any questions?
What's the status of the finding a replacement for zoning?
We've completed the firefighter interviews. We have 2 applicants for the part-time position. We do have schedules.
We're talking zoning, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So we are scheduling interviews for those 2 positions. Hopefully either later this week or next week. I know with the holiday next week makes it a little bit difficult.
Okay.
So we are going to do that. We finished the firefighters list and moving forward with the part-time position in the zoning department.
And are we providing any assistance to any outside township, municipality, or anything as far as HR at this point?
Right now, it's just really based on if a township calls us. I know.
But no formal projects?
No formal projects, no. I know New Jasper, based on a meeting, reached out to us at the Greene County Association meeting and was suggested to give us a call on a workman's comp issue. We helped them out. The trustee, they call.
Okay. And whether Ms. Gustafson was here or not, I would just say that make sure that we're putting our needs as from the township first, obviously, and provide assistance as available to the outside townships. But I know we zoning needs help, and we need to get them a good person for that job. Okay. Anything else from HR related? Ms. Wallace or Mr. Roberts? Zoning?
Thank you, Board. First item on the agenda is a nuisance declaration. Mr. Amrine's here to answer any questions. We do have some letters in your packet on page 16. And the areas that we are looking at, followed by a resolution. And I apologize, I left the resolutions on my desk.
I drove that neighborhood yesterday, and it's obvious that it needs to be addressed. So.
Oh, yes.
So there's no question, and it's not just one block.
These are photos of the trees that we're asking to be declared nuisance trees. And this is a portfolio of photos. These photos were all taken this morning.
Some of these trees, though, at least the ones I saw, would we contract a tree service to take these down, or would we, okay.
Yes.
Because
Yep.
from a
Right, so-
liability standpoint, they're very close and,
It also
and they're
makes
very
it,
dead.
it also makes it a whole lot smoother to bill, to
Yeah.
send an invoice for those services.
Yeah,
If we don't have to calculate time and materials based on our own
that just,
equipment and so
yeah,
forth.
more so from a liability, just how
Exactly,
close they are and how dead they are.
exactly.
They've been dead for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Not our first interaction, with this development, so.
Well, and the letters that went out in May, separate letters for the tree versus the ongoing mowing complaint, made it clear that this would be the next step,
Yeah.
that the nuisance declaration, this, to simply refresh the board's memory, this is an annual event with this contractor at these sites. He's no stranger to these letters. He complains loudly, and in the past ultimately has complied with our
Right.
wishes.
Always do.
This year, we're getting no response whatsoever from
Still
them.
active in the development, he's still building.
So one would think that keeping the still available lots in better condition would enhance their saleability, but I'm not a real estate agent. So,
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to.
There are
pass.
two resolutions in your
There are
packets.
two resolutions in your packet.
One's
one
on
for-
page 21
one for
of
the
your packet.
trees that threaten the neighbor, and the other for the mowing, and I believe the individual parcels are listed in that.
You want to do that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution to declare certain parcels in Arlington Place and the Colony subdivisions to be nuisances per ser by reasons of incomplete mowing and other required maintenance. I gotta go through the whole thing?
You could just say as presented.
As presented on page 21.
Second,
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
And then page 23 would be for the dead trees.
I'll take that one.
Yeah, make a motion to approve the following resolution to declare 2604 Patrick Henry Drive in the Arlington Place subdivision a nuisance per se by reason of dead trees threatening another property as presented.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Following this declaration,
Their
we will
territory, don't look
notify the property owner of the nuisance declaration. We will also publish a public notice of the nuisance declaration and take action according to the timeline specified in our resolution. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
And thanks to Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 25 of your packet is the biweekly activity report for the zoning department. Are there any questions?
Seems like we're tracking dead on last year.
Chugging right along.
I have no questions.
I have no
No
questions.
need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Thank you.
IT.
Thank you, Board. Next item is the biweekly IT report on, starting on page 30 with an updated ticket list on page 32. Just as an awareness item, we are waiting on the third quote. Hopefully present something to you on July 9th in regarding to the step one of the township rebuild for next year, as we discussed in the special meeting. Are there any questions?
I have no questions.
No, did I?
None. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Roads.
Next item is the road department. We do have the then and now purchase request for ladder 61 repairs. Mr. Parks is here to let you know our discussion with Cat.
So it sounds like our request tasking you to talk to them helped a little bit.
Well, actually, we made them prove that they discounted the bill.
Did you?
for
That
you.
was that snapshot
Yeah, I saw
picture. Actually, they discounted it by almost $2,500.
Good.
And at the end of the day, just for clarification, that kind of offsets our labor costs we had originally.
Yes,
Oh, bulk, yeah.
yeah,
So,
Actually,
so in a roundabout way, it's a fair give and take.
right. And actually, by us doing the first 2 repairs they suggested in-house, saved us probably $2,000 to $3,000.
Okay.
And we did provide I think when I put the packet together, it's out of order, but there is a spreadsheet that you requested on all the repairs that's been done to this point.
We're
And
seeing
that's
the
kind of
spreadsheet.
an ongoing list.
It's on page 45 of your packet.
And that's just this unit, just this ladder truck.
Yeah, just the ladder truck. And it's only engine problems.
And did they receive a copy of this?
No, but I do believe Ms. Frick got one, and the chief and Mr. Dorsey, so.
Because that might not be a bad thing to show them, or have on their record.
I'm sure they have the same records.
I'm sure they have the same record, they just don't go back
So,
and look.
and then we did a good job getting them to renegotiate that bill, but anything further with regards to them owning, you know, owning a repair that's gonna be more in line with what we want? With regards to, we're going to also talk to them about putting a totally different engine in, you know?
Sure, what we've done is we pulled it from the Greene County Prosecutor's Office and we're gonna handle it in-house. One of the things that we're working on a quote, which we couldn't get a quote directly from Cummins, what it would cost to put a Cummins diesel engine in there. But we've gone back to Rosenbauer, who said, well, they'll try to get a quote for a Cummins engine in the Rosenbauer ladder truck that they built for us. So,
Okay.
so we should have that hopefully soon, and we'll pass that to legal as well, so we can start with the next process regarding potentially taking legal action.
On your spreadsheet that you provided, as far as, what's the difference between the cost column and the Beavercreek Township Fire Department cost column?
Hold on just a second.
So for example, in the very first line item, it'll show, $2,055.74 in cost, but 0 for BTFE cost.
Right, those were all warranty repairs,
Okay,
right out of the chute.
okay, so there was an invoice, but it was waived but our total out of pocket is $31,075. That's what we've paid to them, but in
Correct.
addition to that, we have lost time.
Correct.
We have people taking apparatus to Canton back, and plus your department's time, and so.
Actually, we do the transport, and actually it's 2 guys. It's roughly a 3-hour round trip,
Yeah.
back and forth to,
Cause you gotta get back.
yeah.
So,
169 days of downtime.
right, so the 169 days of downtime plus the labor to take it to them, bring it back, and so our total cost of this problem is significantly higher than 31,000.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, and so at some point, we're reaching a point of, to file a claim with them.
Right, and there have been
And the other approach
several-
would be a class action, which
Well,
would
actually,
cost
there's
them
been
dearly.
several class actions been filed in the past.
Yeah.
And I found where they filed them, I just don't know the outcomes.
Okay. Thanks for presenting the information, thanks for the work you did, between the last meeting and this meeting, and, continue to amend that.
Yes.
Keep that up to date, and I personally think we should be pursuing some recourse from them,
I concur with that.
so.
There's a
And
motion.
not just a rebuild engine back, so.
A whole new engine.
At
Actually,
least I would-
Caterpillar is out of the the truck industry. It's all now off-road stuff, so.
So there's not gonna be there's no availability for another engine.
Not
So we
one
need
of
to
theirs.
start looking
Not
at
one of
something.
theirs.
That's why
Someplace
we've
else.
asked to look at Cummings. Everything else in the fleet we have for engine is Cummings. So,
So is that what they've transitioned to now in their engines?
Actually, that's what we were using. This motor happened to be in there because we bought it as a demo unit to save money.
Get what you pay for.
Yeah. The truck itself is a very good truck. It's just the motor
The engine.
is- yes.
We can push it and do it, we'll be okay. All right, well, if there's no other discussion,
Do you have a motion
I'll,
there?
I'll make a
133.
motion to approve and then and now purchase request 09316 to Ohio Cat for ladder 61 repairs in amount of $2,746.12 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
I will second that.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
thank you, board. Next item is purchase request for the recovery recycling machine. Budget justification starts on page 33 with a motion on page 34. And if we move forward with this, I have a resolution to surplus the old equipment.
And I apologize for only having 2 quotes, but the machine blew up at about 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoon.
Right at end of life. I have no questions. The information was
I have-
that was provided in the packet.
Right. I
Seeing
don't
no
either.
other questions, hearing no other questions,
I
I'll make,
Googled the cost, you're right there.
yeah. Make a motion to approve purchase request 09317 to O'Reilly Auto Parts for a refrigerant recovery recycling machine in the amount not to exceed $4,200 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
The reason I Googled it is my dad was in commercial refrigeration for 40 years, and I had to carry that unit for him when I was young for punishment. And so it wasn't very often. But
No,
I don't know about that.
I recall you always having it strapped to
they
your
were
back.
not that expensive of a unit, but this is a completely different animal.
This is a completely different animal, and actually,
And so I was like, okay, this is not.
yeah, and
right
actually
apples
the
to apples.
one that we had would do the old R12 plus the new 134. And thanks to our new EPA rules, they're going to a completely different
Yeah.
fluid, which can intermix with anything. So eventually down the road, I'll be back before you asking for a different machine. But currently, let's hope the price comes down, because currently those are about $6 grand.
Okay, if you can call, please.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Thank you, board. We do have a resolution now to surplus the old equipment.
Yeah.
Mr. Roberts.
I have it, I'll just, so with that being said, I'll offer the resolution then to surplus the outgoing piece of equipment, as presented.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is the bi-weekly report. Are there any questions?
One thing to point out, it's hopefully it's changed since I did the report. Weather dependent, paving should start tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock.
When will they stripe, well, as far as, it's all planned to finish out within,
Oh, you mean the
out
section
here?
out here?
Right.
They marked it the other
I
day.
think they marked it, and.
But then we had all that rain.
Yeah, it's on their list to do, but they have to find that window.
Okay.
Yeah, usually when they mark it, it's not too far behind. They got the striper out.
It just, it seemed
Yeah.
like they marked it and then it.
Yeah, it
I guess
rained for the
weather
next
related.
3 days, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Supposed to rain again tomorrow, I think.
Thank you, board. Next item is, on page 47 of your packet under the fire department is a clarification on the status of, the Pro Air agreement. There is some information in your packet on page 47 as well. The chief's here to answer any questions.
And this first item is a little unusual. The cost annually for our Pro Air agreement is under $2,500, so typically it would never come before the board, except in past years, Pro Air had required a signed agreement, which did require board approval. So both the agreement and then the less than required amount would come before the board. Last year, the agreement was changed to, instead of being a year to year, to be a continuing agreement with an exit clause. And we did sign that. So when we were waiting for the bill this year, we said, hey, where's the agreement? Said, you don't have to do one anymore. So we asked for a copy of one because we were trying to sort it out. And what we have essentially is an opportunity to basically follow the agreement as it's written, as it was signed last year, which would mean that we would not have to sign an agreement this year or any year forward. We'd have an out clause within 30 days of the end of the agreement each year. And then the purchase price would not require coming before the board. But because we've done it that way for all the time, we want to make sure the board was aware that there is a possible change. So with the board's direction, we can continue to bring the agreement each year, which would be redundant to how it's written, but it's certainly something we can do. Or we could just allow it to continue moving forward until we have to stop the agreement at some point. So it's really what the board's preference is.
I don't have a problem about letting it continue. You're monitoring it.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any multi-year, is there any benefit to agreeing with them for 3 years and then it's?
That's a good question. Do you know of any benefit? I don't know of a benefit, but I don't know.
Actually, I don't think the price has changed probably in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, if the price isn't changing,
correct.
then I think what would be, at least my opinion would be, if it's okay today at that price and the price doesn't change, the only time to bring it back would be if there would be a price increase.
Okay, any price increase or a price increase that would take it over that 2,500 limit?
To me, a price increase that would take it over the 2,500.
Why it would be required, we take
Yeah,
that point.
exactly. I just want to make sure that I didn't go away with one assumption.
But it does clarify, if it goes up $100, there's no reason to bring it back to the
Correct.
board if it fits the needs of the township.
Yes, sir.
That's my opinion. So are you okay with that?
I agree with that completely.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, so there's no action required if you guys are in concurrence, because that fits with what's been signed and all of our other
So
practices.
is our monthly then around 1,500?
No, it's 14 something a year, or 18. I have two
1410.
numbers in my head. It's less than 2,500 for the year.
Okay.
I want to say it's 1409 or a goofy number.
1410 in your
1410
package.
is what's in here,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
But yeah, so long as there's no contract that needs to be signed or it exceeds 2,500,
Okay.
there's no reason to come back to the board for
Well,
it,
thank you.
for that item,
That would be perfect. We
for
appreciate
that
that.
item.
For
Yes.
that item.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is request approval to purchase additional architect services for Station 61, or 65, sorry, not 61s.
I don't
Based
need
on our
any additional work.
based on our conversation at the special meeting, Chief has some additional information if there's any question.
Yeah, and actually, I should probably clarify, Chief Heister doesn't need any additional
Yeah.
work, so. This is born out of our conversation at the special meeting last week, and going through all the conversation and kind of the best way to accomplish the goal. One of the things that was brought up and reiterated, not only by the architect, but also by by Bricker, our legal for the construction process, is to send out just blind quotes would probably not net us anything relevant, because of the current pace of the industry. The likelihood of either getting people to respond or respond with anything particularly accurate is probably fairly slim. So the recommendation that was made to us and that we've brought to you today is, the architect does have a professional estimating firm that they do work with, and that firm could run basically two scenarios for us. One scenario would be basically cost validating our DD price that we discussed last time, and basically look at the type of structure that we are currently looking at with app and with Conger, and making sure that the prices are in line with what they would consider industry's best practice at this time. Then the other part would be to essentially develop a modified design system that would basically be like a pre-engineered structural steel or something similar, and then have them estimate out that as well, which would incur some additional architectural costs for designing the programming or modifying the programming that we have for that system and then getting that quote. So this 18,500 would get all of the architectural work and those two estimates to go along with it to validate and then give us an estimated cost for an alternative plan. And I'm gonna look over and make sure I said that all correct. Is that correct? Okay. And so that's our best option short of the comparisons that we're already doing both with the Fairfield Township, and then we found a similar alternative that Congress was recently involved with down in Goshen Township, which is a structural steel, a pre-engineered structural steel system, very much like we've been discussing. So with that, I'll open up to the board for discussion. And we have the experts here to answer any questions.
Well, go ahead, Tom. You were the one.
Yeah, I mean,
You were the one that brought all this forward. Don't look at me.
left or right.
Yeah.
Come on, let's go. You never held back before.
Yeah, yeah.
So it goes back to the conversation of when is good enough, and the challenge question is what could the cost be? So we have comparables. One that's in my opinion, a very close comparable. There are differences. You've done a good job of identifying what those differences are and laying them out. But if I understand correctly, there are other options that we could take as well that you've not discussed today. So, and those would be to go back and you know, from a, if, I have a difficult time essentially, at least in my opinion, I would not vote for this today. What I've told you before is that you only need 2 votes to get this through, but at the end of the day, I don't believe that that we have designed the most cost-effective building we can design. So, and that there are, to achieve the same functionality, same number of bunks, the same square footage of meeting space on that site, I believe we can do it less expensively than we have currently proposed. So I believe that we've proposed a phenomenal building that will probably last 60, 65 years. In the meantime, we'll replace that roof probably 3 or 4 times. And when I went back through the numbers of what we talked about at our last special meeting, this is to Mr. Heister, is, you know, with regards to looking at the per square foot difference between our closest example and what we have proposed at this time, at least in the numbers that are coming back, we may have we may have a better structure. We have a weaker roof. We have a smaller site, less concrete, less paving, fewer bunks, fewer bays, and we're $50 to $75 more per square foot, apples to apples. And so my challenge question was, how do you get that out of there? Do you spend $18,000 to $20,000 to try to get the same answer back, or do you spend $18,000 to $20,000 to look at it completely different? And with all due respect, if I go back to the same doctor who tells me I have a problem and I want to get a second opinion, I don't go to the same doctor for a second opinion. I go to a different doctor.
So we have 2 issues related to that. One is we have a highly regimented legal process that we're in the middle of.
Absolutely, and we need to
So-
honor every word of that.
Right, and so our options within that process are limited. So we can continue that process to a specific stop point that's built into it, which is the GMP, and that's coming up. Or we could stop it early and then start a second process or some other thing once that's done. So we do have that option. And for what it's worth, the construction legal counsel recommended we at least go through to the GMP, because at that point we have a hard number to get to.
Right.
The second piece of that is, and I think what the 18.5 here gets us is, in part, like you already mentioned, a validation of the number that we have, but it also gives us an estimated, a better than a back of the napkin estimated price for an alternative construction. So if we wanted to go to a pre-engineered steel, they could take the programming from this building and apply it in a different system.
And you had
and then-
recommended that.
Yeah, that difference then would give us an indicator of whether it's worth stopping the current process and then switching gears and going into a new one. So I think that's the value that this brings, is it would say, you know, yeah, it's cheaper, but is it $50 a square foot cheaper, or is it $5 a square foot cheaper? That's the piece that I don't think any of us can answer, and I don't think these guys can, although maybe I might be mistaken, but I'm assuming that if they could, that we'd have already gotten the answer by now. So, do you have something you wanted to add?
I was just gonna add.
Because the pre-engineered solution is one piece.
Right.
Taking a design build approach is typically how you would get this, how you would get that cost to where at least closer to what you want it to be. You may not, sometimes you say, I want to build it for $2 million, and they say, well, then you better call 10 other people because it's never going to happen. Or they can come back and say, okay, but you have to do this, this, and this. And if you start out with, here's, you know, whatever brand of car you want to call it, the Mercedes, but we can get to work in a Ford, functionality wise, you know, and you hand that to a design build firm and say, do this. I mean, we have an amazing design. We have a lot of work into it. I don't know that spending the $18,000 will get you there. What percentage of that is going to a third party? Because you mentioned a third party service that would, or a company that would do some estimate
About
validation.
75% of that
Is going to a third party.
with the estimator, yeah.
Okay. And what
Excuse
firm?
me, what I'm not 75%, about 45% would be going to the estimator.
Okay.
Because the other portion of that, then about 10.8 of that fee is again looking back, and to back up to your comment about the position and opinions. We were, as I said last week, you know, that we were, the direction that we took from the very beginning of this project was, that Station 61 was our, essentially was the model in which we were starting from, okay? And that building is not a pre-engineered building.
Correct.
And we were basing this design on the same design, the same systems that all the other stations that are built for the township were based on. And that was the direction that we took from the very beginning. So we were not, the instruction was not design a
Look at
pre-engineered
prefab,
building.
yeah.
We want the least cost building we could get, or most value. It was, this is what we've got, we wanna make this better, we wanna improve on the current buildings that we have. And from a functional standpoint, and we really designed it from the inside out. We started from what's the most efficient floor plan we can come up with, and the building was then kind of built around that very efficient floor plan. The opposite approach that we will take if we go the pre-engineered route is we will say, here's our box, here's our outlines of the two rectangles essentially we're gonna have. We're gonna make the program fit into that box. And there's gonna be inefficiencies, there's gonna be a lot of things that probably will have to give up. We'll have to, it'll be a give and take, but it'll be a very different approach than what we've taken up to this point. So, and we're capable of doing both, so it's really, from the direction that we were given. So that's to clarify, that's how I'd like to go.
If I may say something, Mr. Prince, to your point, different from what Mr. Bennett said is, my understanding, we do design, build, and construction management, general contracting. We're doing multiple delivery methods right now. The delivery method should not drive the cost because of the high revised code and how you have to go out and procure those services through a public bid strategy. The market will dictate those prices. You already have in the design build or the CMR delivery method, you're still asking them what are their fees, what are their contingencies, what are their general conditions based upon the criteria that's set forth in your high revised code that OFCC has kind of created that municipalities have now modified to utilize. That delivery method may not necessarily change the cost of the work and what the cost of the work will be. The criteria document that is created that says, here's how we're going to compare contractor X to design builder Y to design builder C. That will drive the cost of working in the marketplace and the subcontractors, because again, you have to get public bids. You're not allowed to self-perform. If you do self-perform, you can't use contingency money. You have to do that 4 hours ahead of time. There's also, the same bid requirements for construction management are also required of design build. I would, I procured Fairfield Township's information, of the probably 20 design build and construction management RFPs that we've responded to this year alone. They're probably almost $80 to $90 million. That criterion document, that RFP that was issued, is lacking a lot of information, because what's going to drive some cost at a station like this is not necessarily pre-engineered metal building programming, but it's the functionality and utilization of the space, in particular the mechanicals. There's been talk about what the thickness of the slab is. We have the 9-inch reinforced concrete slab in this apparatus bay for long-term utilization. They do not. It's an alternate to add a 42-pound mesh, which still isn't adequate if you don't have a 9-inch slab. So there's so many, yes, they're both fire stations, one may be bigger, but it is truly the apples and oranges comparison. Both objects are round, but the veneer, the skin of that fruit is different from the skins of the fire stations. The same way the inner workings are, the core of an orange is much different than the core of an apple. So those devils in the details, those parts and pieces of the weeds, there's no criteria document to understand that in Station 65, we have 5 split system mechanical units to effectively manage the comfort level of the public space of people using the training room, conference room, versus the firefighters and their comfort level in the dorm rooms to the workout facility. And the apparatus bay, if it's just heated with radiant, with unit heaters, that's different than the system we're talking about providing the conditioned environment in the apparatus bay.
And what you're saying affirms my question of when is good enough good enough?
Correct.
Okay, and and you weren't at the meeting we
Yes,
had.
I apologize.
Oh, you're fine with that. I'm just saying, I don't even know if you were invited. I'm not being rude. I'm just saying, the meeting we were at, one of the discussions was, simply about, not to go to the bare minimum, but do we need to build the Mercedes? That's the real question. And would we do that if it was our own money? If you were a private fire department, would you build that facility for your company? Or would you pare it down and take a little bit deeper look? One of the other things we talked about, when's the last time this township built a fire station?
So 2011, I think it was completed, 11 or 12 was completed.
Okay, and we added one, the 64 was 11, but we replaced one, so.
Correct.
When was the last time we added a station? Let me rephrase my question.
60
It's
years.
been 40-some years, right?
And so, we've waited 40 years to build this new one. You're familiar with High Five Construction? Okay, and so I'm involved in a project with them on a hotel, and inflation hit between the time that the land was acquired and that all the zoning approvals were in place, and we got the bids. And at the end of the day, there was a seasonality to that cost. Number one, everything else that's going on in the construction business as far as the volume of projects that are out there. And then there was also, from a standpoint of the seasonality to when they broke ground and when they got that job started and when they could finish. And so, one of the things we talked about was, is there an opportunity to address cost with the current design if we started the project 6 months later, 6 months earlier, 3 months? Is there an opportunity there?
I caution you on that, because in reading the geotechnical report that you've already purchased, it's already been produced, you already have soils that are going to have to be dealt with, and the optimal time to be dealing with those is August, September, not any other month. We're doing a $16 million, 106-acre park that's all soil related. It should have started in August, and they're like, if we start in February, we're never going to get out from front of that. A lot of work dealing with those soils, so I would say no. Now's the optimal time with our current schedule, even the revised schedule that has us breaking ground in August, is the optimal time to take advantage of the soils that we're presented with on that site that was already purchased for us to make good.
Okay. If you looked at this from a design build standpoint, how would you take cost out of it?
Not truly understanding what the owner wants and how the mechanicals, like I talked about, is eliminating some zones. Again, that's a comfort level, that's a usability level. Those are discussions that we were never a part of in the beginning. So is there a way to simplify some of that, those things? You can take some cost out and we've done that from the original design to this one. We've simplified some of the veneer, we've made some more corners, we take some of the bump ins and bumps out, we've streamlined the veneer.
It appeared that you addressed what I call architectural features. You modified some of those without compromise to functionality.
Again, some simple things about, do we run the gas line all the way from one end of the building to the next to provide a gas-fed grill for the staff, or can they get by with a propane grill?
Good point.
Certain things like that. Usability-wise, the bunks are pretty simple. The shower rooms are pretty simplistic. We're dealing with, and I think we've got a new plan of attack around the tornado shelter, and what it's going to be required and how we're going to address that situation that's in front of us now and that increased cost. We've streamlined that from the original to the revised.
I was working with the Green County Building Department and coming to a new agreement on what the revised occupant load would need to be. Emergency generators, another item where you can say, the generator can be sized only to cover the critical functions of the station, as opposed to it being, to cover the building with air conditioning and all to run it 100%.
Well, these are great
Well,
points.
Well, but that also can be satisfied if you have like a non-essential load partition on it, where you can still do that, but if the load becomes too high, then it just goes, that's a much simpler option, a lesser option instead of the bigger generator. But a couple things that jump out to me, when you mentioned, Mr. Kretz, the weaker roof, do you mean weaker roof finish, correct?
An asphalt shingle versus a steel
But
roof.
it's the finish,
Right.
correct?
Well, no, it's a 50-year life versus a
But it's a
20-year life.
a shingle roof and a metal roof is a finish, not necessarily a weaker roof
It's not
structure.
structural, no.
And then as I'm sitting here,
Real quick though, it depends upon, is that roof a screw-down roof or a standing seam metal
Standing
roof?
seam.
Standing seam metal roof, there's that, you still got, depends upon if you're gonna do a colored roof, is it Kynar finish, and you're gonna pay the upcharge for a standing seam metal roof with a Kynar finish, Mr. Kretz's
Yeah.
point.
but as I'm sitting here too, I'm thinking about it a different way. To your point, when is good enough? I mean, so far we're saying we're looking at this as a Cadillac to a Chevy. In reality, I mean, with what was just presented, it is an apples to orange, but maybe we're not a Cadillac. Maybe Fairfield is a scooter, and we're middle of the road now. If they're truly not doing their slabs as an option to put them to the proper standard, that's going to be nothing but an issue down the road.
For them. I like the concept about, I appreciate your information, and I like the concept about the different zones. I think that's something we should relook at. We can do that now, couldn't we? Not now,
Well,
but
No, we're
with you.
That's part of.
Yeah, that's
Here.
what,
That's part
yeah,
of.
that's
Yeah.
what the staff, that's what staff's doing. I mean, we
And
have.
I like
committees.
that, I think we need to look at, if the mechanicals are gonna save us some money and we can have the same kind of mechanicals but less, and, who cares if the common area is perfectly heated or cooled, in the sense of
100% of the time.
100% of the time,
I wasn't a part of the conversation, but I know we have, again, this station different from that one is the IT room
Right.
and the cooling that's required for the IT room itself, and the water room and the adjacencies of the tower, those things. I know those can be separated out easily enough and line itemed out. The one thing I wanted to look at and reviewing over the weekend is, getting with the structural engineer and the mechanical engineer, because I believe in some of the documents, there's some seismic information and seismic rating of piping and how it is hung. And that's an integral part based upon zoning code and whatever else. That seismic requirements, that's no big deal. We're not in California running an earthquake, but that does present problems and rise costs, especially as it pertains to fire suppression systems and hangars and stuff like that. So or vet some of that out?
In my mind, what we're having right now is a design-build conversation.
Yeah, these same conversations, Mr. Whitman, I've been
And
having
I'm not,
with
and
the
nothing,
project.
and what I'm saying, I think, is that
Correct.
at the end of the day,
This is
yeah,
exactly what we're here for.
I still believe that, the township picked the right architect. I believe that the township picked the right contractor.
We just didn't give them the right direction.
I believe that we need to refine our focus a little bit and maybe go back now and between the collaborative group and Mr. Parks, make sure that we have a structurally sound building that we can maintain and we haven't created a maintenance problem for ourselves that fits the functionality that the department needs and that we get it started as soon as we can. Unless there's a reason to delay it for a seasonal cost implication. And what you're telling me is get it started as soon as you can. And I understand that, but, you know, that's where I'm at.
Let me point out one
if it
thing.
takes $18,000
This is
to
exactly
figure
what
that out.
staff is doing with the engineers. Mr. Parks, myself, and Nathan, and the chief met with every engineer and app for hours talking about how can we move this and how can we make these things more efficient to reduce the cost. These are things that we do outside of the committee. The committee then meets and then we discuss what we've talked about with everybody in the room. When we have those meetings, this entire room's full. So we're talking everything from the site plan to the soil samples to the heating and air people all in the room and saying, okay, how can we reduce these costs? And trust me when I say the staff that's here, App and Conger, those are things that we're going back and challenging them to. So we have delayed some of the stuff just because we've asked them to sharpen the pencils and let's rethink this and let's not maybe put all these zones in, let's reduce that. So these are things that, you know, and let me say that Nathan's working a lot of hours on this project so that we can get so when we get the GMP, that's when the decision has to be made by the board. Do we move forward or not?
And to comment just to what you just described, in buildings that I've built for my own companies, I've surveyed, you know, the large group. But I've also learned the hard way that unless you bring it into a tight, close group for the final decisions, because when it comes down to, we have to take $50 out of this building. If I have 25 people in the room, it's never gonna happen.
Right, and that's why we
Because-
do the big meeting. Yeah,
Be-
we do the big
because
meeting and
somebody's
then,
gotta give up something,
Yeah.
and everybody looks at each other and says,
If
"What are you
anything,
giving up,
those
Dad?"
type
Right.
meetings, you end up going.
and that's what we're
together.
doing. Let me clarify,
I-
that's what we're doing.
I know.
We meet with the big group, we bring it down to the smaller group, between just the staff you see here today. And then we take it back to the committee then takes it back to the Board of Township Trustees, so.
Functionality, structural integrity, easily maintained, fits the needs of the department as far as the number of bays, the number of people we can house there safely, securely, keep them comfortable while they're there. But it's not a Taj Mahal, it shouldn't be. We don't have a blank check. I just finished a project where a donor gave a check to a nonprofit and said, build what you want, and 12 million later they built it. Now they sold it for 10 million, and they're buying a new one for 4.5 because now they're paying for it themselves.
So the recommendation
That's real.
of our attorneys for this project has been to continue through to the GMP because that provides us with 100% construction documents for monies that we would already be out with that, which would give us an option to go to a design bid build process if the board chooses to go that route. This request will also give us the chance to say take this vehicle and change its shell to be something and its frame to be something lower and give us a
everything
cost
again
reduction.
one more time. And I think you've got the perfect partners to do it with. I'm not suggesting we change horses in this race. I'm saying we finish the race together and you help us get to where we need to be.
But do we need to have this resolution then? I don't know
Well,
if we
we're
need to
looking
spend
for-
this money after this discussion. I think you're right on it as far as, what you're saying is what we need to be looking at as far as those zones and things and what you're talking about.
And we are.
I don't see a point of going forward with this $18,000.
The advantage to moving forward with this would be it would prep the next step if you would choose to move away from the GMP. So we're trying to create the options that the board has asked for and be
I
ahead
don't
of the
see a
curve.
point of
Let me
spending
ask
18,000 on
yeah.
that, and I'd rather take the 18,000 and put it towards a metal roof.
Yeah, let me ask the question, and I don't know if you're in a position to speak for your company and make this commitment here, but if roughly half of that 18,000, I'm not trying to negotiate with you, so, but I'm gonna negotiate with you. If half of that cost is borne by the efforts of app, and the other half is an outside party that you're gonna engage, essentially, would app be willing to essentially continue to partner with us on this? Essentially, we approved whatever it is, the 45%, for the outside party, and if this project goes south, then we owe you the balance. And if it doesn't, we continue forward, because we're just working together to get this done.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, contractually, we're obligated, you know, we would move to construction documents. I mean, we really, that's the next step is to finish the construction documents on this project, so he can get, so the Congress can.
To get a
approve the
final.
GMP.
Right.
And that's all we need to do.
Let the market truly dictate, no, that
Correct.
this is a bona fide job, we'll let the market bear those
Yeah,
prices.
But what that would mean would be
exercise is really, is a parallel track that
Right.
we don't really recommend you need to do. We wanna keep going on what you've already got, what we're already contractually obligated to do, which is complete the construction documents. Like Township Easter said, he's just, we're trying to, based on the comments made last week, we were just setting up a parallel track where if GMP is too high, and we've already looked at another alternative and schematic design.
I don't think we need to do that.
That's
I
the
think we
reason why
need to
that
go back
cost.
through and have this design-build conversation.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're the experts, and at the end of the day, you know, the question, we were bantering back and forth between numbers, but it's somewhere between $50 and $65 a square foot difference between this and what Fairfield is spending. And it may have a cheaper floor, but it's got a heck of a lot more expensive roof. And it may, and I don't know, is their floor good enough? Is our floor twice as thick as it needs to be? We're not doing stamping presses there. I mean, we're parking heavy equipment in the per square, I get it, some engineer is gonna look
Yeah,
at that and say,
but
this is what's
foundation wise, if there's chintzing on the foundation, that could easily be a cost of 10 times the value of the
Yeah.
roof.
I understand, I ran
Or more.
250-ton stamping presses on 8-inch thick floors,
I mean,
so.
again, we're getting, you know,
250
it's
strokes
hard,
an hour.
we keep going to apples to oranges. We're
Yeah.
not- Everything
Well,
we're
we've had
doing
that discussion.
is not an apples to
I
apples.
brought that up before, we were trying to vet through it, work with Zernak Gears, the structural engineer, and looking at the information provided from battalion chief and chief on the weights of the trucks and number of turns, and we're looking and analyzing that to make sure that, again, we're being fiscally responsible with the fiduciary responsibility
Right.
to this board and to our client to provide the
Yeah.
best possible
And
scenario.
at the end of the day, is it cheaper to put a door on the back and drive it through than pull it in and, yeah, I don't know.
You know, again, we're providing preliminary budget, opinions and costs based upon our experience and our understanding of the marketplace. One of our the first alternate is going to be standing seam metal roof. And so if, I make mistakes every day, ask my wife and ask my kids, every day I make mistakes. Maybe I'm high on the electrical cost per square foot in my current budget, that can help pay for
Sure.
the structural, the standing seam metal roof. No more money out of pocket, no more difference in the budget. We made a mistake in the preliminary budgeting of the,
The market shifts.
right, whether it's, you know, again, we got everything run out of conduit, but yet we've talked to, Nalman and Zelensky, and we can run the electrical, branch circuits in the admin living quarters out of a Romex material, which is a more flexible material, which is easier to run, versus putting it all on conduit. Right now, we have it all on conduit. Not necessary after the design build conversations we've been having behind the scenes. We said, okay, let's change that.
So do we need more money or do we need more time?
This proposal was based off of the board's specific request
Right.
for having bids.
Understand.
So if we're willing to wait for the GMP to see what that number is, then we do not have to do this.
We don't need
So
to
this
do
is
that. I
not a
think he's on
requirement
top
of the
of it.
process. This was an additional to help validate where we were at as far as whether we're on track or way off.
Well, I believe that you guys are having the conversation that we wanted, that we didn't hear, and I appreciate that. And, you know, I would want you to continue that conversation with, like you said, the conduit now. And, because I would really like to refocus on, if we could save some money in there, to put a continuous metal roof on.
But still, at the end of the day, just so we're all on the same page, you know, that's still $50-$60 a square foot difference. That's still, as I'm sitting here, gonna be a problem for Mr. Kretz. So it's not just not just those changes to make those value added things, but how are you gonna get the 50/60 to an acceptable?
But looking at it holistically and saying every piece of it adds something. And so there's a cost. So whether it's zoned, whether it's the roof, whether it's the finishes, whether it's the concrete, whether it's conduit versus EMT, it's pennies and dollars add up to hundreds and thousands.
Right. Well, and
So-
I think the issue here is that we've got I'm hearing conflicting, numbers in terms of where do we need to be with the budget? Because when we came in with a schematic design estimate, when Condor put that together, we were in that range of 3.6 to 3.9. At that point, and this is an incremental process. We
Right.
don't just jump ahead and spend all this money and then say, oh, sorry, it's too much. We do this incrementally, so you're not spending money on architectural fees
Right.
unnecessarily. That's why we have SD, then design development, then CDs. So at the schematic design level, we had the range was presented, and you were very clear, Mr. Kretz, to say, I'm comfortable with this range, but we want to keep it down. And then this was your body language. You got to get it down. And I'm like, yes, sir. That's what we're trying to do. So what really seemed to happen then is that when we came back with a DD number, the range that we presented at SD was really too high. And so now, what I'm hearing is that we really need to shift this building down to be below that range we presented at SD. And if that's the case, then all these little tweaks and things that we do now is not gonna get, it's gonna keep us, we wanna be down at like that 3.6 range, that was the whole point, is that we wanna be in the low end of that range that Condor had given us. That was my takeaway. And that's what we're trying to do, is be at the low end or beat that by.
Right, and I'm 450,000 lower than that.
Yeah, and if you wanna be below that, well then,
Right.
that's a drastic change, and I think that's why we presented, we need to look at this parallel track of, if you really wanna get that kind of money out of this project, we gotta take a very different approach, and we can start that process of just looking at that and working with the department to make sure we can meet all the requirements that we were given at the get-go. And so I don't want you to be disappointed when we spend the money to get done.
My heart gets
this
broken
estimate.
every day.
Well, no, and that's why I made the comment I made, because I already know his thinking.
Right.
And to me, the apples, we just need to stop with the apples and oranges comparison, because it's not a true comparison.
Right.
Because you could probably dissect it, and we need to focus on where we're at, and being fiscally responsible with this and doing everything we can to make this happen. And you have one of us that wants it $500,000 less. Okay, I mean that's kind of the benchmark. As I sit here brass tacks.
It's not just an arbitrary dollar amount, though. It's a per square foot, and it's comparing it to what's good enough for another township that's sizable
But
township.
you're comparing, let's just focus on our building. This comparison to another township, it's an apple and oranges. We've gone through
It's
that
a fire
already.
station. It's got more bays, has a better roof, has more bunks.
But it's got a
So-
weaker, but we now know it's got a
It's
weaker.
a different site.
We got a weaker
Different
foundation.
ground, different dirt.
And
But it would
and at the
take
end
all
of
those
the
things out
day,
equation.
there's
It's
6,
still
7, 8
$65
things.
But
more a square foot.
I
at the
can't
end of the day,
justify
there's-
18,000 to do a whole different design platform. I cannot justify that.
But at the end of the day, we also know there's 6, 7, 8 things that are gonna add 400,000 or more to that other project.
Yep.
That I really think that the 50, 60 where you're at is gonna end up being half that minimum.
I agree with
I
you
don't
there.
think any of us can say that with certainty.
No, correct, but we can't say for certainty
The other way
that
either.
it's not gonna end up being more than that.
I feel, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, we are much further down. You know the process, Mr. Kurtz. It's a time continuum. I think I said this in our original interview. You got a schematic idea or conceptual idea, and you got permit drawings. You start here and you finish here. Where that budget was put together is at the 5-yard line going out of the end zone.
Yeah,
We're at the 40-yard line or 30-yard line. You're ready to
I
score.
agree.
We have a lot more information, we have a lot more clarity around the site, the soils, the parts,
Yes.
pieces, and components. And from what I reviewed of that document of where that was prepared, they have left it completely carte blanche. We don't care if you put in the junkiest HVAC system from China, we don't care if it lasts a year, put it in, we don't care if you use PEX piping everywhere. We don't care if the drains in the apparatus bay are plastic versus cast in place concrete. We just want this.
And that's why I say now, after listening to your expert opinion, we're not looking at a Ford to our Cadillac.
Right.
We're looking at we're looking at their scooter to our Ford.
Or
Then-
it may be,
then make a
it may be
motion
their
and pass
Ford
it.
at production versus
I'm just,
our Ford at.
all I'm asking is to do more due diligence.
I'm not saying I don't disagree with the due diligence. I'm just saying at the end of the day, we keep going back to something that I think is not a total fair
And I understand.
fair
It would be-
100% comparison.
It would be very difficult to build two of those buildings identical, because the second one, you would learn something from the first one. And so you would change something. And I get that.
I've done that for Kettering, I've done four pretty much the same.
And also, in all fairness, to just bring up your point, because again, it's an arbitrary number, whether it's 450, 500, 50, 60,
It's a
whatever
per
it
square
is,
foot,
it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we make all these changes, we're still swapping dollars out, they're still on the same point. I don't wanna get 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the road, and Mr. Kretz, you're still stuck at that number. We made all these changes, we streamlined, we made it better, less creature comfort, but we're still at the same dollar, because now we have all our bids. You know, if at the end of the day, we need all those numbers, and we still need to get, in your opinion, as close to this amount, 400 or 500 less, we need to task them with that, and then see where we're at
And I-
GNP.
yeah, I thought we ended up with that, because we were, at our last meeting, we started at $100, and we ended up down at 50. And we said.
48 by my math.
Essentially, we've gotta get it, we need to get this, if we can we get it down to there? That was the question. And what do we need to do to determine if we can lower that cost? And you came today with a solution to at least explore if there's an opportunity to lower the cost. You're throwing out ideas and conversations that are happening either in the background or you're having on your own, to be able, and that's what I'm saying, part of the process, to be able to help bring that. And so, I guess to cut this to the chase, Alex, what I'm hearing is that, let this ride until the GMP.
It's been my recommendation.
Continue
yes.
the same
Yeah.
discussions. You understand exactly where we're at.
Yeah,
You wanna
he's-
build it, we wanna buy it,
So-
we need it.
So
Yeah,
let me,
because
let me clarify a few things so we're not, this 18,000 is, part of the conversation that came out of the special meeting is validating the market and the numbers we're getting back. So the extra steps that we put in place, the 2 special meetings we have were extra step that most other processes don't have until we get to the GMP. So what we did is much like building a house. You go in and you say, this is the house my wife and I want to build,
Yeah, I think we
and then
understand
when
the
the number
process.
comes back, you guys go, So we've added those 2 steps in this process, which I'm okay with, but I've been consistently saying we have to wait to the guaranteed maximum price, the GMP. That's where the board's gonna have to make a decision. And the decision is, we've got, like, we've heard from Conger, is this is work that now, instead of getting estimates back from electrician or plumbers or so on, they know this is work they're gonna potentially be doing, so they are going to bid back on that, and we'll know the guaranteed max price.
And generally, those come in within 5% of where you're at today, correct?
10, everybody's kind of inflated it by a factor of 10, once you get finality around.
So, and from what I'm hearing, a lot of what we were looking to do to get done with this 18, you guys are having sidebar conversations, having all that, and those sidebar conversations going on isn't costing us any more money,
Right.
and
No reason to do it.
and will allow them to still, I think you guys know what we want you to do, and that when we get to GNP, what you present is gonna be the best presentation of everything that we've discussed today. And I don't see why we need to spend the 18.5 if
No.
they're doing it on their own already.
Based on the information we have today.
And that means we don't need the third party, because the
But
third
No.
party, we have Conger.
You provided what we asked for, at least in that meeting, so that's appreciated. Your presence and your contribution as far as your intellect and what you bring to the table is appreciated. I can say with 100% sincerity, I still believe we picked the right architect. I believe we have a very good contractor that we can work with, and from our staff standpoint, you've done a great job. prove to me and to the board that that's the best we can get it to, and bring it back, and we'll make a decision at that point. At least I will. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we have I have no qualms with, once we get to that point, making a motion. None whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, so, just give an update on the time frame on the GMP, so everybody understands where we're at.
Okay, so schedule-wise,
So you need to come up so I can.
Yeah,
Sure. You can come on up.
I'm gonna go, yeah,
Otherwise you won't make the video.
Justin, I'm just.
Oh, he's on the video. It's
Well,
just
yeah.
He said video, that, you're on your own.
Most people look better from the front than the back. Come on up.
Okay, so right now, so we will get moving full speed ahead on completing the construction documents. And we will have, once we get through that process, so we develop the CDs, the CDs up to 95%, and then we sit down and review all that as a group, make sure we have everything. And then we go back and finish that last 5%. To get to that, so make sure I've got the right schedule in front of me here. Run date, yeah, this is right. So 7/31. So at the end of July, we will have the 100% documents completed. They will then go to Justin to Conger Construction, and I've got 15 working days in the schedule for the preparation of the GMP. So he sends that out to bid, and so we'll get those numbers back.
So we're saying mid-August?
Yeah, so about third week of August.
Okay.
So now we have to time that with, your approvals and making sure that comes into to a meeting date, so we can get the approval on the numbers, and then we can get construction started immediately. So that's something we haven't really talked about, as a team here, to make sure the timing is correct. But
And please have, your internal, informal discussions you've had, please, prior obviously to that 7/31, have another meeting of the minds.
Absolutely,
Small
yes.
focus group to essentially look at how can we, without compromise, like I said, to structural, to maintenance, don't create a maintenance problem, and make sure we've got, our people and our equipment taken care of, but yet the community doesn't drive by and think, my God, they built a Taj Mahal.
And that is continuing on a regular basis.
So just make sure that continues, and if this board's satisfied with that, then we'll hear, essentially, we're gonna hear back mid-August.
Or sooner.
That week of the 20,
Well, the 27th is our meeting, 13th and the 27th in August.
okay, well, that would work.
yeah, that would work, then we would be able to provide information to chief, who could then provide it, to be on the agenda for the 28th. We would provide that on the
27th?
23rd.
The 27th.
27th is Monday.
Okay, so we'll get it to you by the 23rd, which is that Thursday, correct?
Yeah.
correct.
So we would get our information, our GMP information by noon the 23rd.
So we are meeting with the city on the 20th of that week.
Because we'll also already be in for permits at the same time, so we're saving efficiencies there, to where we'll be bidding the job and permitting at the same time. So if there's any comments from Mr. Kuzma and his department, we can get those captured in the bidding strategy to let the market bear that cost. Not trying to deal with change orders on that, if there's any comments.
Right.
Let the market dictate that, so that again, in September, and the way
Right.
September's been the last few years, it's the optimal time to get started with the earthwork.
Okay. I would ask when you go through that process too, and you're finalizing, please take an honest but a hard look at your contingencies as well. So as far as what percentages are being applied there. Okay. The finish line. So we beat this one to almost death.
Death.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, board. Next item is request approval, annual service agreement for our GIS software. This is what we use for a lot of the maps and things that the chief does provide to you on a bi-weekly period. Chief's here to answer any questions. Budget justification starts on page 48.
And this is software that that pertains to fire, correct?
No, this is the generic Esri GIS software product.
So this isn't a product that we could get from Miami Valley Regional Planning?
No,
for
they
free?
do not, no, they don't offer the licensing for free.
Okay.
They offer
just-
the data, and we actually do get data from them. We get it from Greene County Regional Planning. We get it from sanitary engineering, and really the majority of our data comes from the Greene County auditor. So yeah, we actively use their data, but they don't have the software licensing for the seats for the software itself. And that's what this pays for.
So
If they did, that would be great, but that's not something they do offer.
And this is an annual cost?
Yes, ma'am. And this is the last year of the current state term schedule, so it's been this price, I think, for the past either 3 or 5 years. I don't know what it will be next year, but it is state term schedule currently.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
I make a motion to approve purchase request 08870 to ESRI for ArcGIS annual software support in the amount of $5,069 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Thank you, board. And to your point, Ms. Wallace, if you could get either
MVR.
MVRPC or somebody else they do make Esri, they're kind of the world leader of this type of software. They do have enterprise level software and licensing agreements, and if they wanted to move into that field, even in a situation where we could pay them and they could help defer some of the cost, or for example, some of the modules that we use are very expensive in and of themselves. So if there's some way that they could offer that as a service, I'm guessing we're not the only ones that would be interested, but we certainly would be.
Would you mind reducing something of that in writing and what I
Sure.
could ask for?
Absolutely.
So that I can talk to the
Yeah.
CEO of MVRPC?
It's crazy expensive, so I don't know how willing they'd be.
Yeah, but you never know. They
I'd
might
be
have
happy to help you ask.
an angle on it already. Who
Yes, ma'am.
knows? All right,
Yes, I'll
thank
do
you.
that.
Thank you, board. Next item is on page 50. This is the list the chiefs put together for us per board's request on questions of skilled care facilities. The chief's here to answer any questions. Obviously, you can see we do have a lot of facilities
Yes, we
in the
do.
community.
Yeah, so a couple interesting things about this. First is, in the first column of that table, you'll see the current number of beds for that top group. And I apologize, I didn't put the table together quite as cleanly as I should have. So those beds, we have 847 beds currently. And we have another 175 beds that are under construction right now. So we'll be pretty close to 1,000 by the time all is said and done. We also added in the bottom 4 rows are senior or assisted, not assisted living, but senior living, like apartments, condos, and those are significant drivers for us as well. And we have 100 are under construction. We have 268 total once those are completed. When you look at the composite of all of the built ones, we're actually running about a third of what the number is. So we're running about 2.8 per day for the skilled care, and about 0.2 or 2 per 100 or 0.2 per 100 beds or 100 apartments for the apartments. So we're running, like I said, it's about a third of what that number was for the beds, and about a quarter to a fifth for the apartments themselves. And most of the apartments are single dwellers, but they could have, sometimes there'll be 2 folks in there. So we're definitely under the national average, which I think probably speaks to the skill of the skilled care facilities. If they're not calling us for emergent, they're either handling issues in-house or they're calling privates, which is the way the system is supposed to work. But depending on level of quality and things like that, or changes in folks there, if one is that national average, obviously there's room that we could bump up before we even get to that national average. So we probably should consider ourselves lucky at this point and continue working with them to make sure that they can provide high levels of care so that they don't need us on an emergent basis.
Well, Chief, I really appreciate this chart and these numbers. Hopefully you could tell the City of Dayton people, the commission, this also, because this drives up our runs. And putting my prior hat on as city council member, we never even looked at that. We allowed the growth in the community. We never looked at the concept of allowing more and more senior facilities in the city of Beavercreek, and looking at the cost of the runs that it would be for the fire in the township. So I think this is a very relevant a picture, and for all of us to keep in mind what it does to the community and our fire service. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
I'm gonna clean this up a little bit, and then I'll share it with my regular report to the city.
Might be interesting to include in your annual as well, just to, you know, because I think community-wide, like Ms. Wallace said, it creates an awareness. A lot of people always, they ask how many, you know, it seems like they're building them everywhere, and they are, and there's a reason.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Matter of fact, I've been thinking about tweaking it into one of the regular sections you'll see. So similar to what we did with the opioid issues, add a section in there so that you can see if there's any trending that starts to occur as well.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about that myself, so it's easy enough to share.
even an in-touch article.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 51, is the biweekly activity report. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to make some comments. I really appreciate the fact that I was able to go to the active shooter exercise. I think our staff did a wonderful job in that process. It was wonderful to see other communities involved and other police departments, and I thought you all did a fantastic job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for the experience, and I think it was helpful for our firefighters and police officers in our community to go through that process. I think we found out a couple things, especially about the radios in some of the buildings. They don't work when you get down deep in Coy.
Oh, yeah.
And
And
actually,
so-
it's funny you mentioned that specific thing. We have a joint project. It's on a long boil right now, but a joint project with the schools, ourselves, city and county to try and get some of those dead spots taken care of, both in the high school and in Coy Trapine, correct?
Well, your staff did a great job, and our firefighters did a great job. It was a hot day,
Yes.
and they really performed well, so
Well, thank you.
thank you.
Anything else fire-related?
Nothing.
Okay,
Thank you, Ward.
thank you. Legal? No, nothing, okay. Ms. Aaron's,
Nothing.
MVRPC?
Nothing?
TAC Committee?
The June meeting was canceled for lack of agenda item.
Greene County Regional Planning?
The meeting is tomorrow, and, you know, I apologize for my lateness today, driving back into town from soccer regionals, and I'll be leaving to go right back out of town if the meeting is over, and I will not be able to go tomorrow night, so if someone could attend that for me, I would appreciate it.
I can do it. Is it, what, 7:30?
7:30.
I'm the designated alternate, so that's fine.
Thank you.
7:30.
We met the new director today. Ken LeBlanc came in with the new director, introduced him. Just in my brief conversation with him was there's a lot of activity going on in the township, and wanted to spend some time to understand what projects that we have going on here between Super Street, the water sewer projects, and the growth in the unincorporated area. So tomorrow night you'll be officially introduced to the new director.
Good. Schools we talked about. Is there anything else city manager-wise, or?
I do have a meeting this week with the city manager, although I'm gonna have to reschedule because we have arbitration scheduled this week, so I'll reschedule it, but we are working on an agenda.
Restoration Advisory?
I did provide some information to you. We did meet last week. We had a very long discussion, as you see in the information that I provided with the agenda. We did close out some sites approved by the Ohio and US EPA in regards to 100% completion on site cleanup. Obviously, the big issue, and the press was there as a part of the public meeting to discuss the AFFF foam that was used for many years. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Fire Department has completely gone to a new foam system. There are 2 buildings left on AFFF, and those will be converted hopefully this week, so they'll be no longer using AFFF foam. They are monitoring all the wells on base and out working with the city of Dayton outside the base. Obviously, there's some news articles today that came out either today or yesterday in regards to groundwater concerns. I will tell you that we meet, we talk about where the source, we try to identify the source on that committee, and then go through the restoration plan that is approved by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Department of Defense, Ohio EPA, and US EPA.
Okay.
There's a lot of material there. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. I don't know if I have all the answers, but I'll definitely get them for you.
Always know where to get the answer.
Yep.
Investment Oversight Committee, we talked about that earlier. There's no reason to beat that again. Did we ever finalize or settle on colors for the library?
No, we're still, so,
Okay, so the reason I ask is I went to Sherwin-Williams and I asked which books, as far as color combinations, would they recommend for commercial applications? And so they gave me these two books. And so I've put my initials on there, and I've put a star on a handful of combinations that I would be perfectly fine with any of them. So I'm gonna give those to you. And then in the spirit of trying to help move it along, I brought books for
Great.
everyone else and thought everyone else could vote blindly on which ones they would be okay with. And then
Oh, I like that.
you could turn them in to the administrator and then go from there.
we are,
Because it's one of those things that there's so much personal preference, but it's, the big block is the base colors, and then the other colors are the trim colors. And so, that might help.
we will have.
Thank you.
And if it doesn't, at least I made an effort.
Yeah, once we have,
Yeah, cause
A
this
little bit more
is, you can
user
see this a
friendly
lot
than
better
10
than
million colors
those
going
things
one at
on
a
the
time on the
internet.
internet.
July 9th, hopefully we'll have Rhino Shield back in, we'll have the larger samples. And
Well,
she
these,
will,
yeah, these are all shown colors, so.
yeah,
it's-
so she'll show us what the trim is, and then some of the ones that we've discussed already.
Great.
I'll add these.
My
to-
hope here was that we could check them, and if you happen to get two, that everybody checked the same one without knowing what the other one's checked.
Yep. We
Sounds
will-
good, thank
we
you.
will- We will do that. We'll have to make a decision by
We'll probably get
the
15 different ones.
second meeting in July of the color. Once the board makes a
Sure, yours
decision on the
is-
color,
This one is so.
we'll get a
This,
relatively large area on the building, as a sample. And then I'll ask if individually you go out, take a look at it, make sure that it looks,
Yep.
the color that we picked looks good on that building. And then we'll move forward.
Yeah.
August 13th, the week of the 13th is when they plan on being out here.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, board. That's
Thanks
all I
for
have.
your time.
anything else?
Is there,
Motion to adjourn?
So moved,
no exec session?
so moved.
You gonna second?
Oh, second, yeah, I thought I made that motion.
Ms. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Thanks.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.